Okay, so we left the last video on this problem here that you could solve by factoring, but I wanted to show you how the quadratic formula works. And now let's go to another example where you could factor it, but I'll show you what it looks like in the quadratic formula. So this one will be 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. Okay, and we want to solve with quadratic formula. Now, this is a perfect square, so if I were to factor it, middle term checks, I would get 2x minus 3 squared. That means, here, this is equals 0. That means 2x minus 3 times 2x minus 3 equals 0. And each parenthesis is going to give me a 3/2. A 3/2 is what would make it go to 0. So we really only have one answer in this case. All right, now with the quadratic formula, you're going to start by going a equals 4, b equals negative 12, make sure you include the sign, and c equals 9. And our formula, it's, here, write it out so you can see it here. It's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Negative 12 plus or minus the square root. Be really careful in here. Now I'm going to put parentheses squared minus 4 parenthesis, and then my b is negative 12. A is 4, c is 9. And then the whole thing is divided by 2 times a, which is 4. So I'm going to call that positive 12 plus or minus. Now I'm going to do this on the calculator. And I'm going to type in exactly what is under the square root part, this. So put this in calculator. All right, now I know that's 144, but I'm just going to type it in exactly the way it is. Negative 12 squared minus, and I didn't parenthesis this, 4, 9, and I get 0. Boom. So that's interesting. All divided by 2 times 4 is 8. Now, we know that there's only one solution to this. This parabola is just going to touch the axis. So that means you can't have a plus minus because that would give you 2 answers. And the 0 here is going to kill the plus minus. So really what we have is just 12 over 8. And that simplifies to 3/2. So your answer, x equals 3/2, and when you sketch it, that's 1.5, so we know it's on the right side. So 3/2. Your parabola is only going to touch there because there's one solution. And that's what happens when you get a 0 under the square root. Okay, now, example 3. And let's see. I want to do 9x squared plus 12x minus 1 equals 0. Now this one's not going to factor. You could complete the square, but let's go ahead and do our formula. So a equals 9, b equals 12, c equals negative 1. And then plugging in, so we've got negative b plus or minus. You don't have to write this out every time, but I'm putting it here so you could see as I'm working, right? That's what x is equaling. So negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus, putting my parentheses in, a 9, c negative 1, all divided by 2 times 9. And this part here, I'm going to type into my calculator. So let me clear that. I've got 12 squared minus 4 times 9 times negative 1. I get 180. So negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 180, all divided by 18. Now we want to simplify this because 180 can get broken down. And I'll just do 18 times 10 to 5. 9, I'm going to stop at 9 because it's a perfect square. 2. So 180 is 2 times 2 times 5 times 9. Now 1, 2 from the pair can come out. 9 has a square root of 3. So what I get is 6 root 5. Negative 12 plus or minus 6 times the square root of 5. You're thinking, oh my God, what's going on? Over 18. All right. If all three of these numbers, this guy, the 12, that's kind of dark, isn't it? The 6, and the 18. If all three numbers can be divided by the same number, then you want to do that. You want to reduce them. So I can divide all three of these numbers by 6. And when I do that, dividing by 6, I'll get negative 2 plus or minus, now 6 divided by 6 is going to make a 1 on the outside. 18 divided by 6 will leave 3. Those are my two answers. Now, I want you to, when you do these, I want you to also give the number approximation. So let's say it's something like this where it has a square root in it. It's not like the previous two problems. I want you to give me both decimal approximations. So what we're going to do is take the negative 2 plus root 5 divided by 3 and find what that equals. And then we're going to do the negative 2 minus root 5 divided by 3 and see what that equals. And be careful with the numerator. You want to parenthesis that. So I'm going to parenthesis negative 2 plus the square root of 5, parenthesis, divided by 3. And it's about, well, I'll just round to the nearest hundredth. It's about 0.08. So I'm going to put double squiggly for approximate, 0.08. And this one, see, I can just put the same thing there, put a minus, and I get negative 1.41. It's approximately negative 1.41. So when I go to sketch it, I'll have negative 1.41. This guy is basically sitting at the axis, almost the y-axis, 0.08. And there he goes. All right, now we've got one more type, and I think we can get through this one. Example 4. All right, So let's do x squared equals x minus 8. Now, using the quadratic formula, you want to have everything in this form. Like everything has to be on one side equaling 0. So I need to first rewrite this. Getting x squared minus x plus 8 equals 0 first. And this wouldn't factor, by the way. A is 1. B is the negative 1 attached to the x. C is the number 8. So just for time, I'm not going to write the blank formula, but it's negative b, watch your signs, plus or minus the square root, and by the way, it's x equals, so you remember what you're finding. B squared minus 4ac, negative 1, a is 1, c is 8, all over the whole thing, 2 times 1. All right, let's figure out what that is going to be. Okay, so just typing in, it's negative 1 squared minus 4, that's 1 times 8. Ooh, so I get a negative 31. So 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 31 over 2. Now, if you have a negative under a square root, it's not a real number. This tells you a negative under root means no real solutions. And you can say that. And I'm specifying real because there are 2 solutions here. They're imaginary numbers. And I'm not going to hold you to this. Like, you can just have this as your answer. But what you can do to find the imaginary solutions, and you've probably seen this on STAR, 1 plus or minus, this negative sign can come outside the square root and it becomes an I. The 31 is under there. These are the 2 imaginary solutions. You don't have to worry about that. That's your answer. No real solutions. And by the way, the graph, you can pretty much put it anywhere as long as it doesn't cross the axis. Now, this will be in a very specific place, but we don't have time to get into graphing parabolas like we were going to. So anyway, you can just put it up there, and that's it.